Okay, well, we're in the middle of Hebrews chapter 11. We've been talking about several characters from the Old Testament, and there was one thing that was said about each one of them. And what was that one thing? By faith. By faith, each one did it. By faith, Abraham offered Isaac. Everything was by faith, by faith, by faith. And it doesn't stop where we stopped last week, because it just continues on in verse 30. By faith, the walls of Jericho fell down after they were encircled for 7 days. Had these people tried to attack Jerusalem or Jericho on the first day, what would have happened? Would the walls have fallen down? No, they would have lost. Now, was it logical to tramp around a city for 7 days and expect something to happen? No, it wasn't logical at all. God said, do it. Okay, if you say it, then it's going to work. We'll do it. And so they marched around for 7 days. And when that happened, then the walls came tumbling down, and the people were the army was able to get in and destroy the city of Jericho. And in connection with that, the very next verse is by faith, the harlot Rahab, or it's probably pronounced Rahab, I learned it growing up as Rahab, did not perish with those who did not believe. Now, she was a resident of Jericho. She lived amongst the people that didn't trust in God, but she didn't perish with them. And it was because she believed that God could do what he said he could do. And I want to be on his side. I don't want to be on the side of these people that I'm living with. And so she let down the scarlet cord, and the spies were able to get into the city that way and spy out the city. And as a result, the city was taken over by the Israelites. And so even though she was not a Israelite and she was a harlot, which is one of the lower occupations, I guess you might say, she's mentioned in the Bible, and people have been reading her name for 3,000 years or more, actually more than that. And so it just shows something about God's mercy and God's care. It doesn't matter who you are, what you are, if you have faith. So anyway, yes.
It's true. That's just, to me, remarkable of Christ.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know who she married of the Israelites, but it was in that same lineage. So as time went on, yeah. So there again, it's another thing about how God's providence works through any and doesn't matter. Faith is the key for the whole thing. Gene?
They'd given her profession, she could associate with men and it wouldn't have raised any suspicion.
Yeah, well, that's true. We don't really know how she came to know about this and get involved in this plot, but it definitely was because she trusted God rather than either her own instincts or her own self. I mean, it wasn't instinct for her to think, well, good, if I let these guys in, then you know the walls will fall down and I'll get saved, or any of that stuff. It was by faith for her too. And she received the spies with peace rather than with animosity. And then the Hebrew writer says in verse 32, and what more shall I say? How many more of these people do I have to name? He says, here's what I mean by when I say, what more shall I say? the time would fail me to tell. I mean, what more can I say? Because if I kept going, I'd run out, I wouldn't have enough time to talk about Gideon and Barak, or as we now pronounce it, Barak, and Samson and Jephthah, also of David and Samuel and the prophets. So here's a little quiz for you. How many of these were judges?
Jephthah.
Gideon, Jephthah, Samson, yep, so far. Samuel was a prophet. Barak and David are the ones among those that weren't judges. But all of them, and he could have named all the rest of the judges too, if he had chose to, just giving a sampling, taking it from the time of the conquering of Canaan all the way up through the prophets, which take you to Malachi. I could tell you, he's saying, I could tell you about all of these. Every one of them acted by faith, and many of them had things happen to them. And he's going to talk about those things here in a second. He says, all these people who, through faith, it was by faith that whatever they did, notice all the things that he says happened. They subdued kingdoms, worked righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, escaped the edge of the sword, out of weakness were made strong, became valiant in battle, turned to flight the armies of the aliens. Women received their dead raised to life again, and others were tortured, not accepting deliverance that they might obtain a better resurrection. This is just part of the list. We're going to see more of the list as we go, but did you think of any particular individuals as we went through that list of things, like stop the mouth of lions? Think of Daniel, quench the violence of fire. And once again, the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in connection with Daniel as well. Oh,
Samson and Delilah, isn't he? He gave him, out of weakness was made strong.
okay, there's Samson. Could be David, could be Gideon, could be numerous any of the other judges.
To fight the armies of the aliens, or turn to fight?
Turn to fly. They made him flee.
Oh, okay.
So by standing up against these alien armies that would come in, they made him turn tail and run instead. How about the women received their dead raised to life again? It's a little bit more obscure. Well, that's in the New Testament. In the Old Testament, both Elijah and Elisha raised a son of a woman from the dead. And so I can't remember their names right off the bat, but it was Elijah and Elisha that did that. And it says others were tortured. Notice it says not accepting deliverance. They didn't try to get out of it, in order that they might obtain a better resurrection. Better than what? The resurrection that, pardon? Yeah, that's the resurrection that they're talking about, that they were looking for, but it's better than what? And the answer is right up above. Women received their children, well, it says received their dead, raised to life again. So there was a resurrection then. Well, what was that resurrection? Raised to live the physical life. They're looking for a better resurrection. the resurrection at the final, when we're raised to ascend into the heavens with Jesus. And that's what all of these people of faith were looking for. We've already heard they considered themselves sojourners and pilgrims. We don't belong here. We belong somewhere else. That's where we're headed. And that's why we're going through all that we're doing. We're not trying to get delivered from this. We're doing what God asks us to do because we're looking for a better thing. Then he continues, still others had trial of mockings and scourgings, yes, and of chains and imprisonment. Most of the, well, all of the Old Testament prophets were treated ill. It says they were stoned, they were sawn in two. Does the Bible ever talk about anybody being cut in half? No, but the tradition of the Jewish folks in their early, their writings before Jesus came, in their tradition, it was Isaiah was cut in half, sawn in half, and then the early Christian writers also said it as well. So it's not in the Bible, but it was an accepted truth, I guess you would say, by the Jews and the early Christians. So whether it really happened or not, we can't be absolutely certain, but
because it's a mention.
right, yeah, it had to be somebody, whether it was Isaiah or not, but whoever it was did it by faith. And they were tempted, you name it. David was tempted. He actually failed one of those temptation tests, but all of them, everybody's been tempted. They were slain with a sword. They wandered about in sheepskins and goatskins, being destitute, afflicted, tormented, of whom the world was not worthy. These guys were walking around, especially the prophets. What was their job? They were trying to get people to repent, turn back to God, instead of the people. Sometimes the people did, sometimes the people killed him. Jeremiah, they took down to Egypt, they put his eyes out, and Isaiah, they cut him in half. All of these prophets suffered all of these things, and it just says the world was not worthy of them. They didn't deserve what the world did not deserve to be taught the truth the way the prophets did, because they just treated them horribly. They wandered in deserts and mountains. Who's that sound like? David, as he ran away from Saul, hiding in caves and running through the mountains and the wilderness of Judea, in dens and caves of the earth. I guess I should have read the rest of that before I asked that question. All of the people that we've just been talking about, the whole chapter 11, having obtained a good testimony through faith, did not receive the promise. If you look back in chapter 11, back at verse 4, somebody have it right there, can just read it.
By faith, Abel offered to God a more excellent sacrifice than Cain, through which he obtained witness that was righteous, God testifying of his gifts, and through it, he being dead, still speaks.
Okay, he obtained a witness or a testimony. That's how all these people are introduced, essentially, is they were well spoken of. They had good testimony from God because of their faith. Now he's winding it up here at the end of chapter 11, saying the same thing again. All these obtained a good testimony, God speaking well of them because of their faith. But what happened? They did not receive the promise. And what was the promise? that he's talking about? I mean, there's a lot of promises, but what was the main one of the Messiah coming? Abraham was the first one to receive the promise, and it was threefold that that through his son Isaac, all nations would be blessed. That was one of them, and then all the nations, and then the land promise. Those three things were promised to Abraham. All of them were fulfilled. The land promise was fulfilled, and the great nation was fulfilled. What hadn't been fulfilled was the Messiah had not come yet for all these people that he's talking about. They did not receive the promise. They were looking for it. They had faith. They knew it was coming. That's why they lived the lives the way they did, but they never saw it. God, having provided something better for us, that they should be made perfect apart. They should not be made perfect apart from us. That's kind of an unusual kind of a statement, saying that word perfect can mean complete, but brought to fullness. What he's saying is that these people, they trusted in God, they lived their lives like that, but the promise had not been fulfilled. They weren't completed, so to speak, until the Messiah did come. And what the Hebrew writer is saying is these people were not made complete until us, until our generation, when the Messiah came, and we have the promise. We have finally fully received that promise, and that really vindicates or fills up all of what was missing in all of those people that were mentioned in the rest of the book of Hebrews. Randy?
This verse Bible, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah,
To me, it
yeah.
makes sense of, okay, they didn't receive it until Jesus
Came and died.
came and died with, and that Jesus is the one that they're talking, writing about, even here, as their faith saw beyond the worldly life. And it's the same as our faith should be seeing beyond this world. But looking for the new resurrection, looking for the new creation that Jesus has promised, and that's the promise we're hanging on to.
Yeah. Yeah. Remember in Hebrews 11, at the beginning, it says, now faith is the substance of things hoped for. And we talked about it was the foundation. It's what gave substance to this thing that couldn't be seen. I mean, salvation, you can't see it with your eyes. But they could see it. They could picture it. They could imagine it. And that was through the eye of faith that happened. But it wasn't complete until it actually happened. And that's what he's talking about here. When the Messiah did come, preached to these people that the Hebrew writer is talking to, they all received the promise together, really. They had the promise, but they hadn't received the fulfillment of the promise until this generation of the people that he's writing to here in the first century. Okay, so after saying all this about faith, listing all these people about faith, and telling about it, you might expect him to come to a conclusion, right? Well, he did. Therefore, in chapter 12, because of everything we've just been saying in all of chapter 11, and where he's naming off all these witnesses, he says, therefore, we also, the people that the Hebrew writer is writing to, first century, he says, therefore, we also, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us, what is let us? An exhortation. Okay. Based on everything we just heard about faith, here's what we should do. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us. And another exhortation, let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. And so, remember we started talking about the book of Hebrews in the introduction before we read one verse, talked about the fact that it was written to people that were facing temptation to go back to the old ways, to give up on the fight that they were in. And just the easy way out would have been just go back. You wouldn't be persecuted by the Jews anymore if you just went along with them and did what, went with all of their beliefs and traditions and all that. The persecutions came because they were bucking the mainstream Judaism because they believed that Jesus was the Messiah. And the other people said, no way, he's an imposter. They killed him. He's not the Messiah. They were tempted to go back. They would have got out a lot of persecution if they had gone back. But since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let's just lay aside all the weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, everything that weighs us down. Let us do this. Let's run with endurance the race that is set before us. It takes endurance to run a hard run. You all know my daughter-in-law, Nikki, who runs those 100-mile runs. Well, I can't tell you by experience, but I know that it takes endurance to run 100 miles. And to be able to do it, here's what we're supposed to do on the spiritual side is stick to it. Endure whatever comes along, whatever happens in this race that's set before us. Let's run with endurance. And here's how we do it. Verse 2, looking, oh, by the way, we're in chapter 12. So if you don't have chapter 12 notes, let me know. Actually, it's just a text of Hebrews, but would you like a copy? All right, so here's how you run with endurance. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. So for us to run with endurance the race, what we have to do is keep our eyes on Jesus. And he tells us what he means by keeping our eyes on Jesus. He is the author and the finisher of our faith. Was Jesus the author of the faith of Abraham? Yeah, he was. Was it finished? Was it finished in Abraham's time? No, he didn't see it. Didn't see it happen. Gideon, Barak, Deborah, any of the ones that are mentioned, none of those folks saw it happen. But when Jesus came along, he finished the faith. He brought salvation to mankind, which was what the promise was all about to begin with. Let's look to him, since he's the one that invented it and brought it into being and finished it. Look to him. How did he do it? He, for the joy that was set before him, endured the cross, despising shame. So did he go through the same thing as the prophets did? Everything. He was persecuted. He was ultimately brutally killed. because of what he was teaching, because of the truth and claiming to be the Messiah. He went through it all. And how did he get through it all? Through faith, but it also says another thing.
Sat down at the right hand of God, his Father, of joy.
Yeah,
That's what I'm looking for. Who, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. Where was his eyes? Above, looking to the completion of all of this. Why would he have joy? What things would he be joyful about if he finished the race? All the people that he loved could be with him in heaven. That gave him joy. And for us, when we thinking about when we get up there and Jesus sees us, what's going to be on his face? Joy, a big smile. Welcome. I've wanted you to be here. And just he was looking to the future. He knew what was going to happen. And okay, in order for that to happen, what do I have to do? I have to endure some things, including the cross, but also going through the shame of it, being beaten like a common criminal, having all your clothes taken off, being hung on a cross, people spitting on you, mocking, all that. And it says he despised the shame. I hate shame. I'm not going to feel it. It's not going to affect me. And what happened as a result of that? Sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. What's the highest place any human being could ever occupy? The right hand of the throne of God. Jesus had been a human being, but he was raised from the dead. He was ascended into heaven and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. That was the finisher. That was the completion of everything that had been planned from before the world was even created. He is the author and the finisher of it. And he sat down right where he belonged all along, is at the right hand of the throne of God, being King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. And he did that because he wanted us to be with him in heaven. I mean, how inspiring could that be? I mean, just to us. But to these people that were going through all these troubles and trials, persecutions by the Jews and by the Romans, and afraid for their lives all the time, and seeing their friends taken away and being killed or whatever, that would be inspiring to them. Well, if Jesus can do it, he did it for us. Let's not give up. Let's not turn back. And then he doesn't stop there. He continues on by saying,
say that even though he had that joy and they were able to do it, still had doubt. We're still gonna have doubts in our lives, like he did in the Garden of Gethsemane. He had doubts, but he went ahead and he went through that because it was Father's will that he do it. Even though he had joy, he still had doubts. And at the last minute, but he went through it because it was just Father's will.
yeah, I mean, he didn't want to go through that. Father, if there's any way, let this cup pass from me. He didn't want to have to go through that, but he did it.
To let our faith,
Very much so.
because we have faith, we have faith, and we can't just say we have faith, we better do something with it.
Right, exactly. And that theme is continued here. For, what does for mean? Here's why. he says, look to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Here's why. Consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. The same theme has been through the whole book. Don't get discouraged and don't become weary. Don't let that happen. The way you fight against that, the way you not let it happen, is by considering him who endured such hostility. What does the word consider mean? Okay, it means think about. It means really think about. That Greek word doesn't mean just, oh, I have a fleeting thought about something or whatever. It means take the time to really think about it. Think about him. Think about Jesus suffering all this hostility from sinners against his own self. You think about that. Think about what it means, what it took for him to do that. And you do that so that you don't become weary and discouraged in your souls. If Jesus can get through it, if he can do it, then so can I. Think about Jesus. Let him be our model and inspiration, and let him help us get through whatever we have to get through. Verse 4, he says, you're thinking about Jesus, but you have not yet resisted to bloodshed. Did Jesus resist to bloodshed? Yeah, he did. But you haven't. You're not there yet, people. If Jesus can go through, including the bloodshed part, you think about him. You haven't had this happen to you yet, striving against sin. And you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to you as sons. And now he's admonishing the people, just like he had done when he told them, when by reason of the time you ought to be teachers, but instead you need somebody to teach you the very basic first principles. Is giving a little bit of admonition here, and by saying, and you have forgotten the exhortation which speaks to us as sons, which is recorded way back in the book of Proverbs. Solomon, 1,000 years before their time, which said, my son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor be discouraged when you are rebuked by him. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens and discourages every son whom he receives. Oh, and scourges every son whom he receives. Now notice there's a 4 in the middle of this quote from the book of Proverbs, all the way back 1,000 years before. They were saying, here's why, back 1,000 years before Christ. And the 4 here means, don't despise the chastening of the Lord. And here's why. Because the Lord whom he loves, he chastens. If he loves you, he will chasten you. And if you are chastened, that means God loves you. So don't despise it. Don't get mad, or don't be discouraged because chastening happens. What you need to do is learn the lesson from it. Just the same way that when we go against our parents and they punish us for that, what are they doing? They're punishing because they're angry with us. They're loving us, and they're trying to do what? Get us to change our behavior. Yeah, tough love. And so don't despise it. Don't hate your parents because they send you to your bedroom for an hour because you did something. They're trying to get you to change, to be a better person. And that's what the chastening of God is. But he's saying here, don't despise the chastening. What does that imply? That God does chasten. That God rebukes us one way or the other. Now, in the Old Testament, it also says that time and chance happen to us all. We can't necessarily know, if I stumble and break my toe, oh, God's punishing me or whatever. It might be, but Well, what we need to do anytime anything happens that we don't like, bad things happen, we need to consider, is this God's chastening? Is this God trying to wake me up, get me to change? Gets us to re-examine our lives whenever things happen. Some people, when bad things happen, what do? They blame God. Why me? There was a song by Gilbert O'Sullivan back in the 60s called Alone Again Naturally. I don't know if you remember that song, but it's a terrible song. This guy spends the entire song complaining about, oh, poor me, the position that I'm in. The song is called Alone Again Naturally. Alone again naturally. Anyway, in it, he says, talk about God. If he really does exist, why did he desert me? Well, maybe you should look at it the other way around. Why did I desert him? You know, maybe this is happening, bad things happening to me because I left him, not because he left me. Anyway, that's what we need to do, is look at when bad things happen. It may be God just trying to shake us up a little bit, get us to consider our life, or get us to get moving, get us to put our eyes on Jesus again and be more following in his footsteps, so to speak. And God does it. And why does he do it? He loves us. He cares about us. Anytime there's any punishment, it should be because we love the person that's getting punished. That isn't always the case. There's always abuse, child abuse, and that sort of thing that happens. They get punished just because, you know, a problem on the part of their parents or whatever. But in this case, God does it because he loves us. So then he says in the next verse, if you endure chastening, God deals with you as with sons. Just think of it this way. He says, and here's what I'm talking about, for what son is there whom his father does not chasten? But if you're without chastening, of which all have become partakers, then you're illegitimate and not sons. So what he's saying is, if you are being chastened, that's a good thing, because that means you are a son of God. You're a child of God. He doesn't chasten. He's not going to, he's not, this is not a family relationship. This chastening happening, if you're not chastened, that means you're not really a son. You're illegitimate. You don't really belong to God. So as Christians, we need to expect things to happen, not necessarily good things happening to us. And it's God doing it because he loves us. If we were living a perfect life, would God chasten us? No, but how many of us could say we live a perfect life? If you don't live a perfect life, what can you expect? God will chasten you from time to time, and you need to endure that chastening. If you endure the chastening, if you accept it as God chastening you, then God is dealing with you as with a child, as with a son. Just like in our world, what son is there whom the father doesn't chasten? I mean, I guess you couldn't ask that today, because there's a lot of parents out there that just let the kids run wild. They don't try to correct them whatsoever. But in a healthy family, at least, every father is going to chasten their children. And so if we don't feel chastening from God, then it's because we are not considered by him to be one of his children. We're so far off the beaten path that God just lets you go. Like in the first chapter of Romans, it says he gave them up to their debauchery and all that life. because they were beyond saving, so to speak. And so it's a privilege to be chastened by God, and that's how we need to look at it. That's how we can get through troubles and trials that happen in this life, is knowing, all right, there's a reason for it. We had a lesson last week by Todd Nielsen, just, why do bad things happen to good people? That whole lesson was about this very thing that we're talking about. So then he says, oh, our time is just about up. Well, I'll just quickly read verse 9. At least it ends a little bit better place to end. It says, furthermore, in addition to all that I just said, we have had human fathers who corrected us, and we paid them respect. Shall we not much more, another comparison, much more readily be in subjection to the Father of spirits and live? If we respect our parents when they chasten us, shouldn't we all the more respect the God of the heavens, the Father of spirits? Shouldn't we respect him and be subjection to him and live? What did he earlier say? The righteous shall live by faith. That's what he's talking about here as well. If we stay in subjection to God and live, stay alive, don't suffer spiritual death. Okay, that's where we'll stop. Any questions, comments, Gene?
I tell you, when I was young, if I got in trouble, if I get a spanking, my dad would say, this is gonna hurt me more than it'll hurt you. I thought at the time it was the biggest lie I ever heard. After I had children of my own, I understood it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's two different kinds of hurt, and then for a child, they only understand one kind of hurt. Yes?
My family, when I was a kid. That would have to be written differently, your mother's corrected you, my dad would never correct us or anything, it was always mom who would smack us around, you know?
Yeah.
Dad was a pacifist too. You know, that was mom would do it, but it's good, like my daughter, sometimes our kids don't learn to respect us and understand, our corrections until they're older, until they're adults, and they have kids. Because my daughter, she didn't really respect me and understand my hardness and my disciplinary style when they were kids, but just recently she told people that, my dad was hard on us, but I understand why, and I respect him for that and stuff like that now, and she's in her 30s. So it's like, at the time, they don't understand it, but I'm glad that she's older now, she understands why I did what I did when I was, growing up.
Yeah. Yeah. And as parents, we try to explain, I'm doing this because you need to change. You're not living. This will hurt you in your life if you keep doing this kind of thing. We can explain it, but they don't necessarily get it until later on. And that's what he's doing to these people here. He's explaining it. Here's what this is about. Now, they may not have quite understood it as time went on, but if they had the eye of faith that he's been hammering on in chapter 11, they would get through what they needed to get through. So anyway, we're not done with this whole thing about chastening. We'll have to get to that next week as well. But anyway, for now, any other comments, questions? If not, thank you guys for your attention and for your questions. We'll be back together at 11 o'clock.